to work today?
I did. And I was lucky yesterday. I was one of the first people there.
Everybody ready?
I hate being
Michelle?
one of the first people there.
Ready, Jamie?
Yeah.
Parking lot was 350
Brock, you
people.
okay? You ready?
So if
Yeah.
I mess up everyone's.
Roger, you good?
Yes, ma'am.
There it goes.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I call the school board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg,
Here.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Here.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Present.
Mr. Pierson,
Here.
and Mr. Wilt.
Here.
Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
and Mr. Wilt.
Yes.
Are we in compliance, Mr.
Yes, we
Lillie?
are.
Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any correspondence?
The communications that I had received were either addressed or directed to the appropriate personnel to address.
Mr. Lillie? Thank you both. Can I have a motion to approve the previous minutes?
Moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes?
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilt,
Yes.
and Mrs. Krieg.
Yes.
Mr. Lillie, please. Treasurer's financial report. Did I skip something?
Nope, that's next.
What's next?
Moved.
Oh, we're just approving it. I apologize. Thank you, Mrs. Ortiz. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilt,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
and Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve the invoices?
Moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilt,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Informational items. Mr. Lillie, do you want to discuss these?
Well, you see an anonymous donation to assist with the cafeteria Christmas bike giveaway, and then the Augustinskis, former GHS graduates, donated some product from their UTS distributorship for distribution with lunches. This is something that they've been doing every year for a while, kind of since COVID.
Well, thank you to them. Anything else on that item, Mr. Lillie?
Then you have the investment report. Again, as I mentioned, I think last month, a lot of our higher rate CDs were called, federal agencies were called, as there was a little drop in the market, but we still have a pretty good investment portfolio.
Good, thank you, sir. Dr. Treharn?
Next, we have Todd Pooster. He is here from K-12 Consulting, and he is the one who's leading up our treasurer search, so he's going to provide us with an update of where we are with that.
Good evening. Thank you for recognizing me. First of all, replacing a person like Kevin Lillie is not an easy task, but we're going to do our best to help you find a very high-quality candidate. The search officially opened on January 8th, and it will formally close next Friday, January the 26th. We actually do have some applicants for specifically. These are, and all four of the applicants are licensed, which is one of the things that we insist on before bringing anybody before the board. You know, this is kind of the lull period in the application process. I expect a couple of more applications before the deadline next week. I'm positive about the search. The reality is this is no treasurer position in the state of Ohio today is easy to fill. There are a very limited pool of candidates, and candidates that meet the profile that you have set forth, that narrows the window. But still, I believe that we will have a couple of quality candidates to recommend to you. So with that said, I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
What do you find with the location of where treasurers are within the district?
To be honest, I'm finding that they are coming from northeastern Ohio. We don't have, I'll be frank, we don't have any candidates right now from Ashtabula County. But on the other hand, I would expect those applicants would be late applicants, just because people really don't want to put their names out there until the very last minute. Because this is a sensitive process that treasurer candidates go through, especially people who are currently employed by another school district. And as your profile asks for an experienced candidate, that more or less means somebody is going to be currently employed at another school district, most likely. So I would expect those people to be late applicants just because of the sensitive nature of this process. So
Thank
that's
you.
a good question.
Todd, those applicants, though, how long does that stay confidential? If I
That's
send you my resume, not me, but,
right.
you know, me in charge of the money. But, so those,
In a very hyper-technical sense, as soon as I receive it on behalf of the district, it's a matter of public record if
Okay.
you've got a records request. You know, we try to maintain it as confidential as long as possible until we work with you the night we screen applicants. We don't distribute them at all to anybody, so that we at least can minimize the chance that it just randomly goes somewhere.
right.
I mean, of course, somebody could mention something, and you know, there are meetings, people talk and so forth, but you know, we try to be as discreet as we can, knowing that this is a public environment in which we operate.
Good, thank you.
And can you expand on the fact that you've told the board in past meetings that treasurers don't live in their districts all the time?
In fact, I would dare say that it's the norm in this day and age that the treasurer does not live in the district. And just think about what you're asking for in this search of an experienced candidate. The experienced candidates, chances are they've worked somewhere else. They may have purchased a house in that district or near the district. And especially in this current environment where mortgage rates are 6%, 7%, 8%, cost of housing, as your auditor is going to talk about in a few minutes, has really gone up in the past few years. People are very hesitant to move. I'm a sitting treasurer at a school district in Cuyahoga County, and have 33 years of experience in the profession. I've had 5 different jobs, and I've only lived in the district one time, and that happens to be when I was the treasurer of the district in which I resided, and that was my second position in the career. So it's not the norm, for better or for worse. You know, Mr. Lillie, I know, is a longtime community member. That is a rarity and a gem, frankly. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And how are we on the timeline? We have a tentative timeline. Do you foresee that we are staying
I think
within
we can stay pretty close to that timeline. I know I've had a couple conversations. Maybe should we move interviews to, say, a Saturday morning rather than an evening during the week? And that's something we can discuss at the screening meeting. Just a matter of when board member schedules make this work. But as far as the recruitment timeline, I think you were right on target with the market. Just as a quick review, this is generally the time of year when treasurers consider moves if they're going to make them. By law, contracts end July 31st for treasurers, and many treasurers have an August 1 start date, so that you've got plenty of time right now. I know a couple of other districts are posting as we speak, and I would expect some more openings as we get later into the winter and into the early spring.
Any other questions?
Is about a half dozen or so applications, is that a normal number for?
Actually, that's a good number
Okay.
for a district that profiles like Geneva. So I'll be happy if we can get a half a dozen candidates. And you know, and when I say a half a dozen candidates, there might be one or two of them that for whatever reason really don't fit your profile well. So the number you actually interview may be lower, but you know, if we can get 6 at least licensed people in the applicant pool, I think that's important. And just as a reminder, treasurers in the state of Ohio do have to have a license by law, and there are probably about 1,000 people in this state that have that license. We might find another 100, 200 people that could easily get that license if they needed it. But the point I'm making is this is not a large pool that you're even looking at to pull from. So that's why when I say 6 is a good number, that's the rationale behind that number.
Thank you.
One more thing, and tell me, Todd, if this is for our January 31st meeting.
Yes.
But we have the anticipated start date as August 1st, and we talked about you, Kevin and the new person overlapping.
Correct.
So if we
And let
move
me
that
clarify
up-
what that August 1st start date means in our context. Is August 1st would be when that person becomes the treasurer solo, Mr. Lillie is retired. You know, that it is the norm that you give a person coming in 10 to 15 days to work with the retiring or outgoing treasurer. So, and that can be arranged by mutual agreement.
Perfect, thank you. Anything else? Thank you so much, Mr. Puster.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming out this evening. We certainly appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
Next, we do have, as Mr. Pooster mentioned, our county auditor, David Thomas. He is here with us this evening to talk about the triennial property value and tax update.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for having me tonight. Appreciate coming out. For the board members, really happy to answer any questions for you tonight. Happy to talk as long as you'd like me to. For members of the public, we've had a good amount of outreach on this whole process. Hopefully all of you have received our postcards last year. We had about 4 or 5 town halls in the fall last year. We're having about 5 or 6 scheduled for this spring. We have a couple webinars, lots of information on our website. I put my cards on the back table. It's got my cell phone number on it. Please don't hesitate if people have questions. If you've got concerns, thoughts, reach out to us. We're happy to help explain, walk you through whatever you'd like. I'll be speaking and created this one-pager. It's a front and back. The page is on the back table. I believe you all have this as well for you too. Just to kind of go over the process real quick, how it affects Geneva schools. And like I said, happy to answer any questions. So every 3 years, we update property values in the state of Ohio. Every county is on a different cycle. So this year, we are kind of paired with ourselves, Trumbull, Mahoning, and Geauga County. Next year will be Lake County. So Northeast Ohio is kind of covered in these 2 areas. This past year, so what we're looking at is essentially the effective value for all properties in the county as of January 1st of 2023. We have about 82,000 or so parcels here in Ashtabula County, so our role is to value those parcels based on what they could sell for on the market on that date, so January 1st of 2023. So our last update was in 2020. That was a full mass revaluation where we went out and laid eyes or boots on every single one of those 82,000 or so parcels. This year, in between those mass update years, is what's called a triennial update. So that's where we'll look at not individual properties. If a property owner asks us to come out and look at their house, we're always more than welcome to do so. But in the in-between years, what we do is we look at the market. All property transfers happen through our office. We get about 5,000 or so transfers on average every year of all sales that occur throughout the county. So over the past 3 years, we've been tracking those sales. Where have sale prices been moving in relation to our previous values? And the state also tracks those as well. where have sales that they believe are valid arm's length sales, where have they been moving in relation to our values? So essentially over the past 3 years, as a county, what the state has said by looking at all the sales that have happened over those 3 years, as a county, our value has increased by about 32%. So that's essentially been our task then, is to go and move our values by 32% countywide. Now, each individual neighborhood is going to be a little bit different. For example, go-to one is Roaming Shores. Roaming Shores along the lake. We've seen massive expansion and growth in the market. And so those values have been up tremendously. Geneva on the Lake, very similar. Folks wanting to live in certain places. We've had other areas of our county where values and sales really haven't occurred, or there hasn't been too much of a change. And so those values are much different. On our website, we have a good amount of information for you to see. We've got some maps, some graphs, some kind of charts of the county. Where have values moved? Which sales have we used for the determining of changes in values, for example? So you can even dial right into your own neighborhood, look and see all the sales that have happened around you, and help to do comparisons just for your own gratification. So, that's the value side. I can tell you, based on transfers that are even happening still this month, our values, by and large, now with 82,000 parcels, I'm always the first one to say we're going to make mistakes. We're going to miss things. We're going to be maybe off on some of them. We're more than happy to have that conversation. There's a process called the Board of Revision where folks can appeal our values. But by and large, our values are still below where sales are coming in now. So I believe our values are pretty concrete. If anything, because they're based on last year's sales, they're actually still trailing the market. In 2026, we'll have another update year. We'll see where the market moves in 2024, 2025, and then 2026. And then we'll update values again in that cycle. But right now we're talking about January of 2023. So that's the value side. Thankfully, unlike sales tax, unlike income tax, property taxes are not a direct correlation to value increases. So as values go up, thankfully, our property taxes do not increase dollar for dollar what that value increase was. As you all know, and as we continue to educate and remind folks as well, a vast majority of levies actually bring in the exact same amount of revenue as when the voters first approved them. So over the years, as value increases, we'll actually decrease the tax rate to bring in the same amount of revenue for a vast majority of levies that all local governments receive, schools, cities, villages, that type of thing. That's why traditionally, taxes do not correlate directly to value increases. Now, there are two exceptions to that, on top of some kind of unique levies, for example, bonds that you may pass to fund a fire truck, or maybe an emergency levy that is a direct, kind of brings in the same amount every year. But for the most part, the two exceptions I've outlined on your sheet here, something called inside millage, and something called the 20 mil floor guarantee. So for inside millage, every single property in the state of Ohio, regardless of what voters have passed or not passed, has 10 mils, or $10 per $1,000 of the value, that's taxed onto that property and is split up between all the different local entities. So your school, the county, the village, or the township, first responders, split up between all those different entities. Unlike traditional levies where we'll decrease the tax rate to bring in the same amount of revenue every year, those 10 mils are applied directly to your value. So as values go up, that 10 mil revenue goes up. As values go down, that 10 mil revenue goes down. So that's the first exception. The second one is something called the 20 mil floor guarantee. And so what that is essentially it's a state school funding policy where every school in the state is essentially guaranteed 20 effective mils, 20 mils of tax revenue. Now, there are some exceptions. Certain types of levies are not included in those 20 mils, but by and large, guaranteed about 20 mils worth of tax revenue. Here in our county, last year, we only had a handful of schools that were on that 20 mil floor or below. And so what that means is if a school district is receiving less than those 20 mils of tax value, our office then must apply the difference directly to a property value, all the properties in the district, to bring up your revenue to 20 mils. So following the mass increases in values, with the market over the past 3 years, now every school in our county receives an effective rate below 20 mils. Those vary, but now we must apply the difference between what Geneva, what Grand Valley, what Pymatuming receives as an effective rate versus the 20 mils of guaranteed amount. And that's applied also directly on to every property value. So those are the two exceptions to when values increase. Right now, everyone can view their tax amount on our website. Bills are being mailed as we speak. Folks can view their distribution. They can see graphs of where their tax bills go, for example, breakout of every levy. On the property owner side, all the information is there. On the school side, what that difference essentially means for your school, for all the different schools, is essentially increased revenue due to the revaluation and due to higher property values. So as a county, we essentially moved from about $5.3 billion worth of value to about $6.9 billion worth of value. So quite a big increase. Your all's actual change, we only changed residential properties. We did not have enough commercial sales over the last 3 years to be able to say with any certainty where values moved commercially. So we only moved residential sales. So you all were then essentially, when you balance all the essentially values out, pretty much right in the middle in terms of total value changes, right about 25% as a district. So what that correlates to, you have 3 mils of inside millage. So on every property here in the Geneva School District, 3 mils on that tax bill goes to the school directly. That's applied directly to value, whether, like I said, they go up, down, stay the same. So that is essentially equal to about $105 for every $100,000 of value. Think of a
100,000 or 1,000?
100,000. So every
This says 1,000, I think. $105 per 100,000?
oh, that's a typo.
Okay,
I will fix
I just
that.
want to clarify.
Yep, no problem.
There we go.
So
Pointing out a mistake already.
oh no, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's why we have this in Word, so we can change it.
Thank you.
So essentially, it's $105 for every $100,000 of value is directly applied through inside millage. On the 20 mil floor side, that was a larger difference. And you all are, again, right kind of in the middle in terms of where that 20 mil guarantee of effective millage is versus where you all are actually receiving based on what voters have approved and based on what the effective rate is. So there's about a 4.1 mil difference there in your actual effective rate versus the 20 mil guarantee. And so what that means is about $143.50 for a property of $100,000 is essentially applied directly, and that's been done this year because of that guarantee. Now, with values staying constant every 3 years, that is not a guaranteed future outlook. That can change. If values go down, if we have a market crash tomorrow, heaven forbid, we'll track the sales, we'll see where the market moves, and then we will, just like we did in 2008 and 2011, significantly decrease property values based on where the market has moved. What that would do then is that would increase tax rates to bring in the same amount of revenue as before, and you could theoretically climb out of the 20 mil floor. I'll say that that's quite a big difference, 4.1 mils. So there is no real way to say for certain what will happen in the future. But I can say for the next 3 years, as we put kind of in the number 4 there, essentially the values are pretty well set for the next 3 years in terms of what you can expect for the revenue side and what property owners can expect unless there's some change with that individual property. Damage, for example, a sale that you can say our value is incorrect in addition to a property, something like that. In 2026, we'll update again, and then we'll make changes to all properties across the county. So this is not, folks can view their tax bill. I've been very honest since January 1st of 2023 that the market is strong, taxes will be up, and here are the reasons why. So this is nothing that you all are unique for. Every school district in our county has now this same problem or positive, depending on how you want to look at it and how you want to address it as as a community and a school. I'm speaking with pretty much every local government that will have me just to explain this, to walk you through the process. Everyone's approaching it a little differently. As I said, this is new revenue that's not guaranteed for the future. A levy, you're guaranteed that revenue for the lifetime of that levy. This is essentially a funding gap policy that allows schools, should they not be able to pass levies, to be able to receive funds in these types of situations. So at the very bottom, I've got QR codes. There's links on our website for folks to look at essentially how we go through the reval process, what we're looking at, different sales, what tax credits are available, how they can see the different distributions on our website for all the different levies. So that's everything in a very brief, quick, as fast as I can make it nutshell. I've got lots of webinars that are an hour long or so on different pieces that you can listen to. Happy to answer any questions from you all. And like I said, as members of the public, always happy to answer questions if you call our office or attend one of our town halls.
Thank you, David.
A lot to throw at you at once. I apologize.
Questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you for presenting this.
This is very clear. Thank you. This is, yes.
And for being ahead of the curve. I followed you for a while, and I think I've been at least privy of this since October. I think that we'd forecasted a 32% rate, so hearing 25% in variance, and you guys are still looking at 82,000 plus properties. That goes a long way, David, so thank you.
Yeah, on our website, we've got comparisons. Kevin's been a great help with our office, obviously, for kind of diving into some of this. It's new for us. The guarantee is kind of something that our county schools have not faced before. But as we're seeing higher values, which is a good thing, people are moving into our county. Sales are still strong. It's a positive. It's just unfortunate that from a property taxpayer side, stronger sales mean higher taxes.
Higher taxes. Makes sense. On the website, are there the dates for the town halls?
Yes, we've
Locations and
got.
all that are on the website?
Yep, one in Geneva here at the library, sprinkled all throughout. This Friday, we have an online one at noon for folks to watch. The appeals process goes until March 31st for folks to appeal their property value if they think they couldn't sell their value for what we have it on the books for. And I think nothing helps when you've got, I'll be honest, we're ranging in tax increases from $500 to $2,500 for properties. So nothing helps to soften that blow. I just hope that folks knowing at the very least, and us at least helping to share a little bit more of the background and the why. I can also tell you, and please share with folks too, the Treasurer's Office has different payment plan options for free that you can kind of spread it out throughout the year. I always encourage folks, if they escrow their tax payment, to look at their bill, print it off of our website, see where all their money is going, and then either fund their escrow a little bit more if they can. Otherwise, second half of the year, they essentially double to make up for the first half. So there's different things that we can kind of help or point you to. Credits as well that don't lose any local revenue. They're made up by state funding. And there's a lot of policy conversations that we can have on all this as well. But there's just basic realities that we're faced with currently.
Right. What?
I'm sorry.
Did you have a question?
No, go ahead. Yes, but go ahead.
Just to be clear, as David pointed out, the county average was 32%. While Geneva was down at 25.4%, that means there's other taxing entities in the county that are well above 32%. This is very unprecedented, at least in our county. The highest amount that we've seen as an increase was in the last sexennial reappraisal in 2020 when it went up 7.49%. At that time, that actually put us back onto the 20 mil floor. We had been off the 20 mil floor, Geneva Schools as a district, since 2010. So that drops in value in 2008 as a result of recession and so on, took us off the 20 mil floor. So for those 10 years, 11 years, we weren't on the floor. 2020 put us back to the floor. Being on the floor is one of the reasons, as David indicated, that we're seeing this. The other reason is people willing to pay more than the list price on a house over the last 3 years, and having bidding wars driving up that. Mm-hmm. And so because the law is written this way and they have to look at sales, you're looking at 2% of the properties in Ashtabula County that sold, driving that 32% increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we'll essentially look at all those sales that happened over the last 3 years. But if you think many sales, especially in our county, may not be arm's length, they may have been commercial, some commercial sales, for example. In certain areas, like think of Richmond Township, think of Denmark Township, we may have had just a splattering of sales over the last 3 years. Other areas, maybe we had a little bit more, so they all kind of balance out. But you're right, we're 82,000 parcels. We're probably looking at about 3,000 parcels in terms of actual sales. And then where is that kind of driving the market, and where are we seeing that? Certain areas we've got more kind of statistical probabilities than others, but at the end of the day, we're happy to talk with folks about their values, if they think their value is off, or if there was a sale, for example, that's below our value. But the market as a whole, highest county this year was 42% increase. Those were your Franklins and your Butlers. Lowest was about 30% in terms of Athens County. So we've seen this all across the state, and it's an interesting trend to be following.
So my question, really, I want to say it in sort of my own words to make sure I understand you, David, okay? So if the auditor website says my house is worth $100,000, but I think I can only sell it for 80, I should contact you, and I have till March 31st to figure that out with you. But let me finish. But on the reverse, if you value my house at 100,000 and I sell it for 200 because of like what Kevin was saying, a bidding war and all that, then that is what is sort of skewing it now all up, because that's happening, right? Am I right?
Yeah, so we purely track sales.
Right.
So we're looking historically over the last 3 years, and that's actually a perfect example. This month, we've seen a majority of our sales at 25% higher than our new values. Last year, we were seeing a majority of sales at over 50% higher than our old values.
So it's valued at 100, my house, and I sell it for 150
or more.
or more.
But if you think that you cannot sell your property for our new value, which, like I said, we're looking at the outside, we're looking at mass data, then there's probably something wrong with our data. We can take a look at it. But typically that's based on condition, that's based on, there's some issue on the inside of the house, something that we may not quite know
okay.
about.
You think my house is worth $100,000, but it needs a new septic, and it needs a new roof, and it needs, okay.
Yeah. Always put yourself in the mind of a buyer, and as a buyer, what's attractive to you? What are you interested in? And then how much are you willing to pay?
Yeah. Nice, thank you. Anything else? Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pierson, legislative report, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I only tracked 2 bills, and I believe one, the Senate Bill 205 might have even been talked about. I know this is really exhilarating stuff for everyone. But the 135th General Assembly basically introduced 2 pieces of legislation. That means they haven't passed them. They've just introduced them. The first is going to be amending Section 3313.6. And what it does is it asks for the state to develop what it calls appropriate instruction about the harmful effects of marijuana. This kind of goes along with your DARE type programs, and it talks about not just alcohol or some of the drugs we have in the past. It aims to propose putting marijuana and the developmental effects of the consumption of marijuana inside of that. From the bill analysis, it's going to include the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to review available resources, and they want to develop a list of evidence-based curriculum, materials, programs, and instructional strategies that are going to be related to how that's going to affect student health. For Geneva, this is going to mean that we would probably need to develop a curriculum around the use of drugs like alcohol, nicotine, anything, flame, vapes, the things that you guys have seen in the past, and try to talk about how we can deter and inform our students about the harmful effects before they're used. Again, this has not passed, so we're not at that stage yet. It has just been proposed. I believe this is a reaction to the passage of the marijuana bill last November. Next, we go to Senate Bill 208. This was introduced 12/19. And this was basically, it allows people who are in the military in Ohio to open enroll and move the student from district to district and make the transfer of credits easier, something that our servicemen and women need because they obviously travel a lot. We have a lot of Coast Guard stations along the coast. We have people coming from the southwest, southeast of the country, some of the coast there up here. This just makes it a little bit easier for us to go ahead and allow any student who's not a native student of, let's say, this district, transfer in if they meet that curricula. Again, introduced, not passed yet. We'll continue to monitor these as they go through the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierson. ATEC report, Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes, on Thursday, January 11th, ATEC held the budget hearing, the organizational meeting, and the January regular meeting. It was reported that the audit is complete and they received a perfect rating and will be receiving the Auditor of State Award. Several out-of-county and state field trips were approved, including the upcoming Skills USA competition. That will be taking place in February, and there's already preliminary winners listed on their Facebook page, so if you want to take a look at that. The next meeting will be a special meeting on Monday, the 22nd, and that's pertaining to the new facilities project for both the new Public Safety Academy and the Advanced Manufacturing Lab that is being done. The majority of it's coming from the $6 million grant that ATEC received. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the superintendent, Dr. Treharn.
So each January, we join in with the Ohio School Boards Association to celebrate and recognize local school boards of education. And so therefore, I would like to acknowledge and thank our school board members for their service and dedication to the district. As you could see, each of them are listed on the agenda with their years of service or current service to the district if they've not yet been here for a year. I also have a proclamation to read as well as certificates to give each board member. So the proclamation says, in the name and by the authority of the state of Ohio, whereas more than 700 boards of education oversee and manage the personnel and properties of school districts throughout Ohio, and whereas school board members are elected to establish the policies that provide the framework for their schools, whereas school board members devote hours of their time each week to provide leadership to their local schools, whereas school boards fill an important role with members creating and monitoring district plans to make sure students have the tools and skills to reach their full potential, and whereas school boards maintain communications with all segments of their communities to keep the public informed of district activities, whereas school board members advocate for the best interests of the students served in their districts, whereas it is important that communities support school boards so that students receive the best education and are prepared to be the leaders of tomorrow. Now, therefore, we, Mike DeWine and John Husted, Governor and Lieutenant Governor of the state of Ohio, do hereby recognize January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month on this first day of January 2024. And it was signed by both of them as well. So again, thank you for your service to our school and our district. I'm going to pass along the certificates that they presented, and at this time I'd like to invite our administrators to come up and provide some thank you notes from our students as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you pass those down
Yes.
to Jamie and Michelle, please?
Thank you.
Ooh, goodies. Ooh, smart.
Thank you.
That's my favorite
Great.
part.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Oh, they're so cute.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Oh, that's not gonna stay on
Thank you. These are always so fun to read.
there. All right. I'm coming. Yes. Organized.
So the Soaring Eagle program is a student and staff recognition program I implemented 2 years ago. For all who have received this, they get their picture taken with Tuffy, which gets posted on our district social media. They receive a Soaring Eagle backsack, a coin for our book vending machine in the applicable buildings, and a positive phone call home, which I have to say is my favorite part of it, to a person of their choosing. So additionally, this evening, the Board of Education would also like to recognize them and present them with a certificate. So for those who are able to attend this evening, when I call your name, if you can head over here to the, my left, your right, I suppose, aisle, and Mr. Riley will escort you up to the stage. We will then present you with a certificate from Mrs. Milliken Dixon, our board president, and we will stop and pose for a picture, and then for the students, you will just continue across the stage, shaking each board member's hand, as well as our administrators. So if our administrators could come up as well at this time. And since there were a few students I hadn't heard back from, I'm going to go ahead and read each student's name, and if they're here, wonderful. It looks like we have quite a few in attendance, and if not, we will certainly still share their name and we will get their certificates to them. So going back to the first month of the year in October that we begin recognizing our Soaring Eagles, we have Dean Wendt,
You okay? All right.
You're going to keep going this way, Dean, because you have all these people that want to say congratulations to you. Good job. And as he's making his way down the stage, Bayla Burse is our next Soaring Eagle from the month of October. And if you are here this evening and you knew that you were a Soaring Eagle from October and you want to start heading towards Mr. Riley, that would be helpful as well. Noah Figueroa. Gia Palmisano. Okay. Annabelle Bragg. For the month of November, we had Carlisle Carruthers. Elsie Jones. Marker where he left off.
Right here. Elsie,
This is
right?
Elsie. Yep.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Show Mrs. Porcella.
Spin around and hold your certificate. Emma Cutlip. Nicholas Ginn. Sarah Cybalski. And for the month of December, Maddie Filer. Melody Baker. Jillian Cacaro. Preston Ramirez. And Martin Johnson. And if we could give a round of applause to all of our Soaring Eagles. You guys can head down on it. Next, we have our years of service recognition. We have been doing this each month this school year. We started this school year a few months back. We started recognizing our staff for their years of service and dedication to the district. And in doing so, we have honored those with at least 10, 15, and 20 years of service respectively. This evening, we will celebrate those who have at least 25 years of service. Therefore, at this time, I see that our administrators have already come up to recognize their staff. So please help us recognize these individuals when they are called up, as they will be presented with a certificate and a token of our appreciation. And I'm actually going to start with a few of our administrators who have reached that milestone. So, Mrs. Doherty. Bless you. Yeah. That's okay. Tony Markajon. Kevin Lillie. And Jared Brigard.
Back in the day when I could still dress like kids, and they look so darn cute. Not anymore. Now it's mom. Stop. That's right. Lucky if we get 10 words out of them a day. Well, Cooper more so than that one. But. What are their ages? Alex is 21 and Cooper's 19. Oh my goodness. You're not old enough to have kids that age. Amen, girl. Yeah, Alex is a junior at Miami. He's a double finance economics major. And then Cooper's a freshman at Toledo. He's computer engineering.
All right, it looks like Mr. Poland, you're going to go next.
So yeah, you get to retire pretty soon.
Good evening. I have two people here tonight, and we'll start with Mrs. Bobby Horvath. And Jessica George.
Don't fall down the steps.
Ostenberg, Test. Test. Ostenberg Elementary has a number of talented individuals that reach 25 years or more. However, I think we only have one in attendance tonight, and that would be the talented Mrs. Renee Hollis.
All right, well, thank you to all of those who were able to come out this evening for the years of service as well.
Okay, thank you all. All right. Dr. Sharon Sosmo.
All right, next we have our administrative reports. And this month, we have both Mr. Markajon and Mrs. Doherty are going to come up together and give a report for all three elementaries since Mrs. Berzenko is not able to be here this evening.
I think it's you, Mr. Markajon.
Test, test.
There it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoweth. And now I'd like to go ahead and do my portion of the report. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Doherty.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Nice.
you. We are a team, aren't we? January, we just returned from Christmas break, so it's a short month for us, so not a lot to report this month, but we have been busy ever since we came back. All the classes have been celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, which was just last Monday. And we've been doing morning announcement facts. There's a lot of things you can find virtually, like the virtual tour of his home, the, let me look on here, the MLK National Historical Park, which is very interesting. So teachers have been pulling those virtual videos up as well. And just letting the kids know that how important it is to be an activist and a leadership for change. So, and we're trying to keep it at that elementary level so that they can understand it. And so we have been busy with that. And there's so many books out there, which is so nice because at all levels, and we have some in our book vending machine. So it's been nice this year to have all of that. And I appreciate all those wonderful authors. Extended learning, we are starting that up again. Each building, I think, is looking at different grades, but we have wonderful teachers that are getting ready for that, or some of them might have started already. And they're making sure that the activities are fun and educational at the same time, because the students are there all day, and then to stay after school even longer, you want to make sure you have their interest up. And so we're looking forward to that. And snacks. Snacks are important. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Markajon? Yes, thank you. And also, we're having some career visits. I serve on the county career committee, and I work with Denise Miller. She's wonderful, and she does a lot for us. But a lot of our daily educational activities, we do try to connect those to careers that students can have. There's so many careers out there, as we all know as adults, but they might not recognize. But we do have, in connecting with our community, Denise makes sure we do that she has set up UH Hospital Geneva to come in to meet with our 5th grade students. They were visited by them. And we had representatives from EMS, radiology, nursing, and the nutrition department. The students they rotate around in the classroom, and the students could ask questions. A lot of them asked meaningful questions. The teachers prep them for that, but they're generally interested in what's out there. And they did, pretty much all of them did tell the students that, because they connected it to what they're learning, that math is very important along with technology skills, so and those soft skills as well. So it's very interesting for them to come in and share that with us and know that they are in the community as well. And then 4th grade's going to be taking a trip to ATEC. This is their first experience with it. And so Denise sets up areas for them to go to. She didn't give me that yet. She's still planning it. That'll be January 23rd. But they do enjoy that. They go for a part of the day, and they're in wood shop, they're in whatever they decide to do, and the students there are just so welcoming to them, and they get them excited about that opportunity, because it is a very important opportunity for kids to know that that's there, and that's something that might be in their future. So we have I know a lot of Cork students that have gone to ATEC, of course, and I think we all appreciate that in the county, what a great school that is. And then we are getting ready for our district spelling bee. So we've been having building spelling bees, and we're going to get Mrs. Horvath, our winners, here shortly, because that's right around the corner. And it's just, I love attending the district spelling bee because those kids are just something else. It's so nerve-wracking to be up there in spelling, and I know Kevin gets very nervous too. Are you going to be there today? I'm not today, this year, of course. So I just wanted to tell them, we wanted to tell them good luck with that. So thank you. And then we have pictures. So that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Markajon.
It was my pleasure. You did a great job.
Mr. Riley?
No, thank you, but I will introduce you. Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Dave Riley.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of things on my board report for this evening. The first off is Senate Bill 288, which we know was passed earlier at the beginning of the school year. They really have now made it, they've made it mandatory that effective with this particular school year, that in grades K through 6, we must have some lessons and activities dealing with child sexual abuse prevention, and in grades 7 through 12, it is dating violence prevention education as well as sexual violence prevention education. This is now the law that we're going to do. And in your board packets, I have given you kind of a more of an elaborate, detailed explanation of Senate Bill 288, just for your knowledge. But one of the things that we have to do on our end is we need to notify families. And we will be sending out a letter very shortly to our families in our community. There has to be four things that have to be in this letter. That instruction in child sexual abuse prevention and sexual violence prevention is a required part of the district's curriculum. Upon request, parents and guardians may examine the instructional materials that we are going to use, and our building principals already have those on hand should the need be requested. Also, parents can have their child opt out of participating, but they have to do that in a written form. And also, if the student, or excuse me, the parent of the student would like to see the materials, they have to notify the building principal. The building principal must show them within 48 hours. And again, they have those materials ready to go on their end. We are using the public school work system to kind of help communicate this information to our staff and also to our students. The school counselors will be going around over the remainder of this school year, presenting the lessons and having those conversations with the students. We are using the Speak Up program that was developed by the Foundation United. It was one of the recommended courses, I suppose, or modules that was from the Ohio Department of Education or the Department of Education and Workforce that we now have. They have broken down a lot of topics that are on it, and they've broken it down by grade bands. So what is talked about in kindergarten and second grade is slightly different than 3-5, slightly different, obviously, as you go up the scale up to 9-12. So they're all very grade appropriate there. And the modules, part of the modules has the Columbus Police Department presenting within them. There's some specific officers and detectives that deal with child sexual abuse that are kind of going through the presentations. So, and that was a requirement by the state that had to do. Second off, the gifted programs of the library. We're going to try and do that again this year. We did that last year where we had some elementary gifted students. They would go on field trips up to the library. Last year they did some work with insulation. So that was kind of neat to see the students participate in that. There were some hands-on activities. And we're also going to try and have an elementary STEM or STEAM night first week of March or so, and I'm meeting with Lauren Webster tomorrow to kind of finalize those dates and to try to get that out. And as soon as we do, we'll certainly communicate that to everybody. And finally, the third grade family score reports will be arriving in the district next week. We'll get those out shortly, as well as the high school end of course exams. They were completed earlier in this month. We were notified today of our math, science, and social studies results, and as soon as we all get back into the buildings, we'll take a good hard look at those. And as soon as finally the family score reports for those folks will arrive on March 25th. That is all I have for my report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Mr. King?
I got nothing? No? All right, apparently I don't get introduced, but that's all right. Okay, no light-up suit this month either.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. King.
See, that when the president introduces you, it's all good. Very short, like others were talking about, to open, just a few of the photographs. And I know our choir performed at the December board meeting, but a pretty sizable group of the choir went off to Italy and the Vatican City over the holiday break, and they performed in Italy and in the Vatican City. They said it was a marvelous time that they will remember forever. And again, those are just some of the pictures that they shared. I put, I think, maybe 10 to 12 on Twitter itself. The next piece on the update, part of our Purple Star Committee met with the Veteran Service Director of Ashtabula County. We set the date for the rite of passage ceremony for May 16th, which Geneva will host this year. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, it is a countywide celebration of those who have enlisted in the nation's armed forces and have a ship date. So it's not they're thinking about it. It's not that they're maybe going to. It is they have fully committed. They have passed their physicals, signed off. They are good to go. So again, May 16th, we are working to finalize the exact time, but we are good. It will be here, and we are ready for that event. I give a lot of credit to the Veteran Service Commission. They had probably 59 of my 60 questions answered even before I got to ask any of them. They're just a well put together group. And as it was a very short turnaround since our last board meeting, the second page is full of athletics. And I promise you, the next time I will include wrestling and cheerleading. With a short turnaround, I was able to get these pictures and some very quick stories in here for our swim team, Lillie Eagles basketball and boys basketball. And again, the all-county swim competition was very cool. That first picture I love that is every swimmer in the county. Like, I just think that's a neat opportunity for all of them to come together, see who's doing what it looks like. That was just an awesome event. I'm the father of 2 swimmers myself, so it's pretty neat to see that in action. Lady Eagles basketball, they are doing incredibly well. They are now ranked, so we want to keep that momentum going. They unfortunately didn't get to play tonight, but they will be back in action, I think, on Saturday. Boys basketball had a phenomenal game last night. The coaches are iffy, but the kids are phenomenal. I've never seen 2 teams work so hard as a team. You know, a lot of the teams in our CVC, and I'm not trying to downplay anybody, but they have some standouts, and the teams maybe live through those standouts. I'm very impressed that our teams are where they are because they are teams, and it's not just something that happens when they go out on the court. When you see them in the cafeteria, when you see them in the hallways, there's that genuine interaction. So there's not a day that goes by that I'm still not more impressed by the student body here, especially our student athletes. So. And I didn't have time to add it in. Found out, what was it? It's late Tuesday. Harbor Freight came through. It was a small donation, but it was a lovely donation. I'll put it in the next board update for our industrial arts program. So thank you to Harbor Freight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. King.
Mrs. Porcello?
Not Ken Pullen, but the lovely Mrs. Porcello.
There you go.
All right, good evening. I submitted the federal quota for blind students. I've talked about this each year that I've been here. We have 2 students that qualify for it, and the quota offers funding to the teachers of the visually impaired that work with them to purchase educational materials. Average student receives about $450 per year for those materials. So Jerry Hillier is our teacher of the visually impaired, provides me with a lot of information there, and I know that he is very thankful for that extra funding. The second/last part of my update is a brief, very brief, because everything in special education is not brief, explanation of least restrictive environment. Much like everything else in special education, it's not a black or white situation, so it kind of goes a lot of different ways. It starts out with the language that's in IDEA with regards to least restrictive environment. And then I kind of broke it down a little bit more to layman's terms, I guess, that there's a process for implementing supplementary aids and services in a setting for a student to determine the status of that setting for them, if it's appropriate or not. On the continuum, we always want to start, depends on which way you see it made, I'd say at the bottom, which is completely in the general education setting. And it goes all the way to a residential facility or hospital stay for the students. Traditionally, The process for determining if a setting is appropriate is about 3 to 6 weeks, and I have been in communication with the other schools in the county. On average, it's about 6 weeks of collecting data to determine if the aids that are being provided and supplementary services that are being provided are actually those that are going to help the student stay in the general education setting most of the time. In order to change the placement of a student, a parent has to agree. As a district, you can suggest. You can create a PR1, prior written notice, that says this is the setting that we think is best. We have to provide that to the parent with the why, when, what data we have to support that. We also have to give the parent enough time to say yes or no. As a district, we have the ability to file for due process to move the student, and parents also have that ability to ask for mediation and to ask for due process to determine where the right placement would be. And I guess most importantly, LRE, the placement's determined based on these particular things. The educational benefit of the student with a disability, the non-academic benefits to the student with a disability, and or the degree of the disruption of the education of others. It cannot be determined based on the category of the disability, the severity of the disability, the availability of educational or related services, the availability of space, or administrative convenience. And then I provided the continuum, one version of the continuum. It gives a little brief explanation of what each of those means. And again, typically we start on the bottom and work our way upwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Poland?
Oh, no.
Good evening. Like everyone else said, it's a short month, but we do have an event coming up I'd like to publicize. Next week, we have our Tech Week at the middle school. I want to thank Mrs. George for bringing us back from a conference she went to, and Mrs. Carnett for really these two spearheaded this. Our Tech Week next week is going to focus on social media and tools for the students they use in the future. Every day is going to focus on something different. But in your packet, I gave you a flyer handout on social media awareness event for parents. That is next Wednesday the 24th at 6 o'clock here in the auditorium. We will have representatives from the FBI here to talk about social media, the good, the bad, the ugly. Those are things that we're seeing in our school, that students are getting on social media. They're not sure of who they're talking to, what they're talking about, and it causes some disruptions in our building. And when students are getting devices earlier, it could be a phone, it could be an iPad, it could be anything you can download apps on. We're starting seeing a disruption in the education process because it's carrying over to us. Talking to Officer Cooper, there's things that he told me this year. It's like, I didn't know that happens, and a lot of things. So we're really trying to push this. That event in the evening is for parents only. Please do not bring your students. That'll be for all students, grades, all parents in the district. They will go into detail. They'll talk about a sextortion. That was a case that happened in Streetsboro, thank you. Happened in Streetsboro where a student did commit suicide after a sextortion case. It's very serious. We have people abducted because they get on the social media, they don't know who they're talking to, and they end up in different places. So this is something that's very serious. We thought it was important to bring these people in here. They will talk to students in grades 6 through 12 during the day. They'll start in middle school, and then they'll go up to the high school. 6th grade will be just more about social media, and then they'll get into more of the how you should be on the social media, what you should do, what you shouldn't do with 7 through 12. So I think it's very important. If anyone needs a flyer, I do have some extras here. If you would like one, let me know. I'll pass them out later. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing, Mr. Lillie. Mrs. Horvat has a contract for a spelling bee. It never expires, so you're stuck there.
You're not retiring. We're not letting him retire from the spelling bee.
And just a note also, I don't know if you mentioned it at the beginning or not, Mr. Poland, but for any parent who would like to opt their child out of that presentation, you will have the option to do that as well. Okay. I have a number of things to report on for my report. A reminder that the end of the second 9 weeks in semester ends tomorrow. Parents and guardians can access grades, don't forget, through the parent portal on January 26th. I also certainly encourage parents to contact their child's teacher to set up a conference that will occur on February 6th and 14th for grades 6 through 12, and February 7th and 15th for the elementary grades. I'd like to spend a few moments giving an update on the progress that we've made on our district strategic plan at this point, because I feel like we've definitely made some progress when it comes to our year one goals. So in the finance area, the goal for year one was the board will start the hiring process to select a new treasurer in order to provide a transition period between the incoming and outgoing treasurers. As you heard earlier this evening, the board has hired K-12 consultants. We heard from Todd Pooster. The position, as he noted, has been posted. The goal is to hire someone at the end of February, and then again, we will plan a transition between Mr. Lillie and the newly hired person. Our year one goal for community engagement was that the district would hold technology nights quarterly in conjunction with other planned school and community events. The first technology night that we held for the first quarter was held in conjunction with the September Board of Education meeting. There were various stations that were set up covering a variety of topics that evening. From Google Classroom, Mrs. Horvath was there helping parents complete their emergency medical forms, diagnostic tools, progress book information, and interactive boards were showcased by some of our teachers. The next one, as Mr. Poland just talked about for the second quarter, will be next week on the social media awareness event. In regards to student success, we had two goals for year one. The first being that the district would develop opportunities to transform classroom spaces into personalized learning environments, allowing students to succeed with choice and voice specifically. There are 7 components, and those were the 2 that the group decided to hone in on this year. So earlier we offered every teacher the opportunity to take a part in a book study on personalized learning, which also led to the purchase of flexible seating for classrooms. We had over 40 teachers volunteer to do that, which was wonderful. We have also had multiple sessions of professional development focused on personalized learning, and we expect to again offer that this year to expand the number of staff in the district that are partaking in that. The second goal for student success was that the district would provide opportunities to enhance social-emotional health and promote community connections and a sense of belonging. This has certainly been a topic of conversation in Mr. Riley's presentations for both his Title I parent meetings as well as his gifted parent meetings, along with our staff gifted professional development. At the high school, they held a full day of activities related to social-emotional health as part of Rachel's Challenge. The middle school has had life skills training, start with Hello and Kindness Day. All 3 elementaries focus on a different character trait each and every month with students. And additionally, there have been multiple instances of collections taken for various organizations to showcase the generosity of our staff and students and families. Cork is also focusing on social behaviors and taking care of others, both during library and their morning meetings. And lastly, district-wide, we recognized and encouraged and obviously participated in Unity Day. And lastly, we had one goal under the umbrella of facilities, which was the district will create a plan for the replacement of student activity and maintenance vehicles as well as outdoor equipment. And I could say not only did we create the plan, a 3-year plan, but we have started implementing that as well. So over the next 3 years, we plan to purchase new plows, trucks and vans, student activity vans, as well as mowers. And at this time, thus far this year, we have purchased 2 new plows, a newer truck, and a new student activity van. The student activity van is the only one that is not have been picked up yet because our director of transportation is current.
Picked up today.
Oh, it was? Oh, wonderful.
Mr. Bernard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jared. I didn't know. Thank you. I know that Mr. Ola has been out, and so we're waiting on him to come back and pick it up, so I appreciate that. That's wonderful news. Thank you for sharing, Mr. Lillie. So that's a little bit of an update on the district strategic plan. Next, I wanted to make parents aware of what was supposed to be a new law, although you'll see there's been a little bit of a hiccup here. The Parental Notification by Social Media Operators Act was supposed to take effect on January 15th, but I heard in the news that that is now on hold. So this law was supposed to apply to websites, services, and products that are targeted to children or reasonably expected to be accessed by children. So talking about platforms like social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, or now it's called X, to gaming platforms and message boards. So these platforms were going to be required to obtain parental consent before a student can establish an account for those who are under the age of 16 years old. Now, those that are under the age of 16 and already have an account on those platforms, this does not apply to them, but anyone under the age of 16 who is looking to start or create an account on any of those platforms, this was supposed to apply to them. And they were also going to be required to present parents with a list of censoring or content moderation features. So I guess at this point, we will have to wait and see what gets decided. There's supposed to be a hearing coming up February 3rd or 7th, I believe is a date that I had heard on that, but I know it's coming up in the next few weeks. Moving along here, at the beginning of the month, I had applied for a $10,000 grant through the pilot program, or the pilot company, I should say, that would go along with our Stronger Connections grant that we received earlier in the year. And so I'm happy to share that I was awarded this grant next week. And these funds will go towards building stronger connections between the school and families, honing in specifically on new families moving into the district. So I'm happy to move forward with that. And last but not least, we have our Soaring Eagles for the month of January, and these Soaring Eagles will be recognized at the May Board of Education meeting. But starting at Austinburg in 3rd grade, nominated and chosen by Mrs. Knapp was Stuart Krause, and she wrote that Stuart is a great student who works as hard as he can and never gives up. He gets nervous about some activities in gym class, but he attempts them anyway. He is shy at first in a big classroom, but he cares so much about his friends. Once he knows you, he will joke and laugh and tell stories. He comforts anyone he sees who is upset or crying. He tries to include everyone in every activity we do. Stuart is brave and strong even when he isn't feeling his best. All very nice things I thought she wrote about him. At Cork, Mrs. Ellis chose kindergartner Kane Cecil and wrote that Kane soars every day in our kindergarten classroom. He is a very kind and helpful friend to all. Kane always includes friends who have no one to play with. Our class is very lucky to have Kane in it. At GPS, also another kindergartner, Cash Brooks, was chosen by Mrs. Fouts, and she noted that Cash is a very polite and conscientious student. He is a very hard worker and always tries to do a good job. He is a good friend and a positive role model for his fellow classmates. He demonstrates Soaring Eagle qualities on a daily basis. At the middle school, Mr. Clue chose 8th grader Grace Andrews and wrote that Grace has earned straight A's the entire year in both science and the announcements and is a model student in every capacity. She routinely goes above and beyond to ensure both her schoolwork and our daily productions are completed above expectations. She is respectful to her fellow classmates and can be trusted to handle the assortment of tasks given to her. GMS is fortunate to have a person such as Grace representing us. And last but not least, at the high school, freshman Bria Lewis was chosen by Mr. Balcones, and he wrote that Bria is an outstanding student who leads by example. She goes above and beyond on assignments and always has a positive attitude. Bria is extremely respectful and volunteers in class. She continues to set a standard in class and brings an energy which positively impacts our learning environment. She should be proud of what she has accomplished thus far and continue to be the positive light she has been in our classrooms.
Thank you course, because I just put them in my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Okay. Next item, the treasurer recommends approval of the draft easement agreement for driveway purposes for the Birdie. Did I skip one? I apologize. Number 5, an insurance renewal proposal was received from the Ohio School Plan on January 11th, 24, for coverage for the district's building and contents, fleet, and general liability. The treasurer recommends approval of the insurance renewal proposal from the Ohio State Plan at a package premium of $99,623. Last year's premium was $90,710.
Moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Can we just go
Oh, I'm
over
sorry, discussion.
the highlights of
Thank
where
you.
our increase came into play?
Yes, thank you.
Well, a lot of the increase is just the market
Okay.
increase. According to our representative, that was going up about 8 to 12% for all districts. And I mean, not just districts, as a general market increase. Our loss ratio overall was good. We did have a high loss ratio in auto, based on the bus 8 accident. And there's some other smaller losses, but that did not result in too big of an increase. So basically, it went up a little over 9%, and most of that is due to the market.
Thank you.
And there are other smaller increases. Actually, the property exposure, as that increases, that's say a per $1,000, and so there's an additional charge there as well. And our auto with new buses increased the auto exposure, so that also led to a little bit of that increase.
Thank you, Mr. Lillie. Any other questions?
And so we forecasted, we believed it would be between 8 to 12%, we landed at 9%. So even with those adjustments, we still were on the lower end of what we were.
Of the overall market increase, and it could have gone up if our overall loss ratio was higher.
Yeah.
As they said, we were below the line on that, so that did not lead to.
With the new buses, that's very impressive. I appreciate that very much.
Anything else? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, number 6. The treasurer recommends approval of the draft easement agreement for driveway purposes for the property at 617 North Broadway, owned by Richard G. Grenier, and authorization from the board for the board president and treasurer to enter into the final form of the agreement.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
So this is what you spoke of last meeting.
This is what I mentioned
The
at
driveway
last
that's
meeting.
partially on our property?
Right.
Right.
The driveway ended up being encroaching on our property. Franklin Blair Title Agency was used to draw up this easement agreement. That work will be paid for by the owner of the property. I'd also checked with the Ashtabula County Auditor, as I mentioned prior, to see if he knew anything about it, and he had even mentioned that Franklin Blair draws up a lot of these easement agreements. It's pretty simple. I'm not sure that you got all the pages in your, you only have 2 pages, so the back, these were 2-sided copies that were sent, and she only copied the first page of each. What you are missing says that neither grantor nor its successors or assigned shall have any responsibility or liability for any damage caused to or on the easement area unless caused by the intentional conduct of an owner of the burdened estate. That would be Geneva Schools, the burdened estate. Except as otherwise provided herein, grantee and his successors and assigned shall be solely liable for and shall defend and hold grantor and grantor's successors in title harmless from and against any and all claims, demands, or actions brought or threatened by or on behalf of any person or entity alleged to have been injured or damaged while on the easement premises described herein. Grantor agrees, contracts, and covenants that neither grantor or any of its successors or assigned shall locate or construct any permanent improvements or structures within the easement area or attempt to obstruct said area in any way, Again, this is an area that has not been in the way of our conducting business at that site. This grant of easement shall be perpetual, shall be binding upon all heirs, assigns, and successors of either party, and shall be a covenant running with the land. And then you're missing the signature page, and it has to be notarized.
Thank you.
And then the last page that you're missing, Exhibit A, Surveyor's Description of Easement Area. I don't know if I passed it around at the last time, and I thought I had a copy here. But now I'm not seeing it, but it showed a picture of the driveway that encroached and some landscaping that encroached, and that is the area of the easement.
And this is to the north of the bus garage
Right.
fence.
Right, and just to the north of and right along Broadway, running up to the house that would be the neighbor to that property.
Thank you. Any questions or anything? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
And Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
And I did locate that Appendix A as well as a copy from the auditor's page that shows the property. If anybody wants to see that, we can pass that around.
Okay. The treasurer recommends the following funds be appropriated according to the adopted budget.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion about that?
Just note that you see the pilot company grant that Dr. Hrina-Treharn mentioned, and then the Ohio K-12 network is an annual amount, $1,800 per each school building to help cover the cost of our internet connection through our ACE site in Neoma.
Where's the driveway?
This is the
What am I looking
property,
at? Okay,
and this shows you the picture of the driveway.
perfect. Thank you. Any questions or comments about that, number 7? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
And Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
The treasurer recommends that the board approve the disposal of the attached list of assets as they are no longer of any use to the district. Some items will be traded in or sold at public auction using public surplus.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Some of these items were in service when I was in school here, so I don't know why you're laughing.
I mean, it was just last year.
Oh, right. So to those of you that had those items in your building, thank you for taking care of those items and getting at least the minimal usage out of them.
Yes, good. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Before you take a motion on this next one, as was discussed prior to the meeting started, I think we want to amend or do an agenda modification here to include Mrs. Ortiz as wanting to attend this OSBA Board Membership 201 conference.
Yes. So we need a motion for that?
No, I'm bringing that up as an agenda modification,
But
so
then
you
we have
don't
to-
have to amend the motion. You just take
Nice.
a motion and
Okay.
second and vote on that.
Perfect. The superintendent recommends approval for myself and Mrs. Jamie Ortiz to attend the OSBA Board Membership 201 Conference in Columbus, Ohio on February 17th.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Just so you know, included in the cost, we've asked for approval on a hotel the evening before. The conference starts at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday morning, and Mrs. Ortiz and I have agreed that we'd like to travel the night before and not have to do that in the morning, just so everybody's aware. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
The superintendent recommends the following personnel actions for the 23-24 school year.
Moved.
Second. Any discussion?
37 years.
Right?
That's pretty cool. We appreciate Ms. Cinco's work.
Ms.
and
Cinco, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a name I remember when I was very young at Geneva Elementary. That's cool.
Yes, thank you both. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wilt,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
and Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
And now we have arrived at the public comments section. Public comments will last 30 minutes, 5 minutes for each person. No person shall be allowed to speak on the same topic twice until everyone has had the opportunity to do so. So do we have anyone in the audience who would like to share things with us? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Gary Himes. I live at 5082 Shadowbrook Drive in Geneva on the Lake. Resident of the district for 38 years, retired educator of 34 years in both Ashtabula and Lake County. Couple additions to the board here. New year, new philosophy, hopefully. I would encourage and implore this board, as you move forward with leadership, to never support or offer any administrator a 5-year contract at the first. I've never heard of it before, and I've been around a lot of school districts over the course of my career, interacted with a number of boards, a number of superintendents. I've been very, very fortunate in that respect. But again, moving forward, I would strongly implore you to never offer a 5-year contract to an administrator. It's just unfathomable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Christy Burns, 4262 North County Line Road, Geneva, Ohio. I wanted to speak at the last meeting, but I didn't have enough of the information provided to me at that point in time. On December 7th, my daughter, Amelia Burns, who is a second grader, she's 8 years old, was assaulted. Not once, but twice in the same day. The first time that she was assaulted was in a gym class. That child was then put on the same bus with her, and she was assaulted on the bus. Since then, it took a month to be able to view the video. The information that I was given from the director, I believe is her title, of the bus garage, Shar, at that point in time, the information that I was given would have made any parent think that everything was okay. After viewing the videos that I viewed, everything is not okay. There's a policy. You asked me to tell you which policies had been broken during this time. There's a policy that talks about honesty and the employee being trustworthy. I received a call from Char Leonard. I still have the message if anyone would be interested in hearing it, that assured me that my child was not hurt and that the other child had put his hand on her face to ask her why she was crying. That is not what occurred. I would like you guys to view the video. It's disgusting. My daughter cried that night going to bed, and she has cried many nights since then. Not one time. And you might be lied to when you ask this question. Not one time did anyone talk to her or ask her how she was or what happened to her. Not once. So then I received some information stating that the district was going to offer her counseling. So I hope that that also goes to outside of the district. She is still having a very hard time from this. The fact that she was assaulted once and that child was allowed back on the bus with her makes me ill as a parent. I expect things to be done better. And talk about least restrictive environment. You couldn't have said it better yourself. The degree of disruption of other students. My daughter has to walk in every day to the classroom to sit with that same little boy. Yes, he was removed from the bus, but she has to sit with him every day. It disrupts her.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
David Perdue, 156 Orchard Street, Geneva. I would like to state how I feel first of all, I'd like to commend the 2 new board members that we have. Glad to see the change. Too bad we don't have some more, but hopefully that'll happen in the near future. But I'd like to address the way the applicants were treated, myself, to be appointed to the board for the Richard Arndt seat when he resigned. I put in an application. Mr. Lillie was extremely helpful, gave it to him. We got interviews in a half-hour time frames, which was done. 2 of the board members are still here out of the 4 that were there. First of all, I think it was troublesome that Mr. Pierson and Ms. Krieg were not at least consulted. They're going to be on this board for at least the next 4 years. I think that's their term. And they should have at least been consulted, been there and talked to the applicants. Now, it's not, you might be sitting there and say this was sour grapes because I didn't get picked. That's not sour grapes. Roger Wilt is a friend of mine. No problem with the person that you chose. What I have a problem with is how it was handled. When I left, I was told that on the following Wednesday, I believe it was, if my dates are wrong, I apologize, but we would be notified the following Wednesday there would be a board meeting, executive session, which it should have been, to choose the person. At 5 o'clock that night, I talked to John Barbeau, the coach is a good friend of mine and a teacher in this school, and also Eric Bowser, as I attended the boys' basketball game, which I do quite regularly, and the girls. I was told as I talked to him about, well, I applied, whatever, didn't figure I would get it, but I applied. And I was told, oh, that was already decided. That was decided. Mr. Wilt was appointed at 9 o'clock in the morning. Further, I found out from a number of people that the 4 of you, the 2 that's here now and the other 2 that are gone, you sat around and talked about it, and there was other people there. You violated the Privacy Act totally by doing that. That's the problem you people have on this board that have been on it. Transparency does not seem to exist and hasn't on this board. That's why parents are mad. That's why they're upset and come up here and tell you, just like the lady that was here. Now, I also, you could have sent me, not only me, but the other 4 candidates that were not chosen. What is wrong with giving us an email? You gave me an email as to when I was to be there. You couldn't have given me an email or a phone call that night and had the courtesy to tell me that I had to find out from other people? No, that's wrong. That's unprofessional. What do I get? I get a letter the following Saturday, 4 days later in the mail from Miss Ortiz. 4 days. That's wrong. This board needs to be run better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say anything? Thank you all. We will then end our public comments. Does the board have any?
I have,
Mrs.
I have
Krieg,
many
please.
things. I'm going to start each month sharing emails that were sent my direction. I will certainly not share names or specifics, but I want to make sure that people realize that I can only speak for myself here. I'm seeing these, I'm reading these, and I'm taking them into consideration. A few of the emails that I received, one was from a gentleman who was talking about the probability of perhaps having electric buses. Shared a link, gave some good information about it, just wanted to share with the board. I said I would share at the meeting. 3 of the emails I received over the past month had to do with bus issues. Technically 4. My question is how many times does the same person have to be cited as a problem before we do something as a board to implement a plan of action to either correct the behavior or get rid of her in the job? So my plan is I want to have a conversation about what that's going to look like. I have many issues with the special ed report because the comments and the conversations that I'm having with staff and parents in this community, that entire report is just a waste of paper and time.
Mrs. Krieg, really quickly. Just a matter of protocol and confidentiality. We can't talk about personnel.
That's why I didn't.
Specific personnel.
That's why I didn't say a name.
Well, we know who you're speaking of, though.
No, I don't think you do. I don't think you do.
Okay. That's fair.
No,
Thank you.
It's not who you think I'm speaking of.
Okay, thank you.
The next thing I wanted to mention from the meeting today, there wasn't a spot where I could jump in, but Mr. Riley, the permission slip for the child abuse, the sexual abuse that's going to be offered to our children, just from experience, I think we should list something on there where they have to send something back and say, yes, my child can participate, or no, they cannot. Not just, if we don't get something back from you, then your child will be put through that program. Only because I read a couple articles this week on districts that had to redo the entire process for permission just to save time. I don't know, it may already be on there, I'm not sure, I just wanted to mention it. And then the last issue that I would like to talk about is sports practices on wind chill days. Now, I had several people reach out to me, and I in turn reached out to Dr. Treharn to ask if she had heard from anyone concerning whether teams, if families, coaches, students, athletes were upset that the athletes couldn't practice on a wind chill day. She told me no. However, as I went back through and started talking to people in the different capacities, I found out that they were in fact following the chain of command, and that those people were reporting to either Mr. King, and Mr. King was reaching out trying to have a conversation. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, you don't have to. But in the email that I received, you cited that it was part of the policy, and technically it is not part of the policy. It's actually number 22 in the athletic code of conduct, and it says that when school is closed for a calamity day, the varsity coach will contact the principal, who will consult with the superintendent to get permission to hold a voluntary practice. In my history with my kids that have been athletes, the practice was open, they were allowed to have it. If the child could not get there, they could not have it held against them for missing a practice. That's my experience. Others may have had a different one, but I don't know. There is nothing that talks about wind chill. So I think this is a discussion that we need to have. When there is a warning such as the wind chill that was going to expire at noon or 1 o'clock today, if we were able to have our Soar with an Eagle kids come and be honored, which I'm grateful that they were here, but why are we not having a conversation so that our athletes can have a practice? These are kids that are getting out, most of which are driving, getting out of a warm car, going into a warm building, practicing, and going home. They're not waiting at a bus stop. They're not walking to practice. This is a conversation that needs to be had because, again, not one decision that was made with this serves students. Not one. if we're going to cite policy and procedure, we have to have it spelled out in policy and procedure, and it's not. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Krieg. Anything else for you?
No, I don't know if Brock has anything.
Thank you. Anyone else have any?
I just want to acknowledge that even though I gave some weak responses, I read all of my emails, and I typically respond between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m., as some of you have seen. I've received a number of correspondence from very concerned parents who have done meticulous jobs outlining things. Some of them have been nice, some of them have been mean, albeit, tone aside. I've taken them extremely seriously, and I've run them not just to the appropriate parties, but they are in our lawyers' hands. And that's about as far as I can say it. I want to tell you that as I receive your emails, I read each one and take notes that are kept in accordance with our public records policy, and I follow up with them, typically every 3 days until I get a response. So I want to let people know that although maybe some of my responses are weak, because I cannot speak for the entire board, and nor do I give that appearance, I want to let you guys know that I do take public transparency clearly, whether we agree, whether we disagree. That doesn't concern me. I want to let you know that those do get covered, and they are currently in the hands of the powers that be. I can also say some of them I'm very actively seized on, and I want to see the response, which I think to date makes at least my position look as if I may be weak or voiceless, and I'd like to push that to the proper channels to try to get an amicable result for both parties. That's a really weak way to say I really understand where you're coming from, but I really have to try to play the game until we can get effective policies that we have not had before in order to fix some of these glaring holes that you all have had to deal with for far more than 3 years. So thank you for being patient with me. I do have those correspondences, and they are in the right hands. Thank you.
I've just got a couple of things. Mr. King stole some of my thunder earlier. Since our last regular board meeting, Geneva Schools lost a great representative in Jim Santiago, who passed away. Jim worked on the front lines, being the voice of the Geneva football program, as well as being a leading person on the levy committees for the district. I know that Jim's going to be missed in the district, as well as my friend. So that was a sad thing that happened since the last thing. And as Mr. King had talked about some of the athletic stuff, I do have some information on the wrestling program. I know that they were at the Kenston Invitational late in December. I know that 4 wrestlers made their way to the podium, and I know that there's some freshman wrestlers that are wrestling up at the varsity level and doing a great job. So, they're being welcomed into the program. And our cheerleaders are by far the best in the county, and our student section is well represented. Both boys games, girls games, home and away. As Mr. King can attest, I believe he got to sit in the student section last night. So congratulations for that. Congratulations on the coaches. I wrote down that the boys team were on an 8 or 9 game win streak when I was doing my notes last night, and I had seen on Twitter that the game was in the 3rd quarter. I just figured that you guys were coming back, so I just put it down as a win. So congratulations to the sports teams.
Thank you, Mr. Wilt. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Anyone else have anything? I don't. I haven't been anywhere. I'm usually the long one. All right. And that concludes the open portion of our meeting. The superintendent recommends the board hold an executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee or official. We are not doing any more business when we return. Thank you all for coming so much. I appreciate your interest and your participation. And we'll see you next month. Meeting adjourned.
We need a
No.
motion, a second.
We need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Motion.
Move.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
And Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.